Everybody, good morning. What we are going to do today is what we're going to look at is risky business. So before we actually start looking at risky business and an insight into how we actually manage health and safety risk in a business, what we're actually going to do is have a little introduction. So have you ever wondered where you fit in the world of risk management? I think of myself as the production designer of risk management. Why? Like the storyboards that guide the director during a film, I design training courses that enable your organisation to bring risk management to life in full colour. So risk management is not an abstract concept. It's not cerebral or even complicated. It's an integral part of everyday life, and the prevalence of risk is a primary factor in all our human decision making. It doesn't matter whether we are consciously aware of these decisions or not. So think of that time when you have driven your car for hundreds of miles, only not to remember any of the journey at all. To improve our decisions, we must first improve our thinking, moving away from assuming that risk management is difficult to actually achieve. After all, we do it every single day, every time we drive our car or even cross the road. And at Safety Rocks Limited, we work with organisations to establish an understanding that risk is not separate from everyday operations, but an integral part of all operations and everything within the business. So managing risk should never be painful, but actually sometimes it is the last thought in a business. And I believe that it's understanding risk that's important and foreseeing both the challenges but also foreseeing all of the opportunities that risk has the potential to actually bring that can be fundamental to improving our organisations and our business, however small those organisations actually are. So I'm Carla Crocombe. I'm the founder and managing director of Safety Rocks Limited, and we've been rocking safety since 2015. And today we are going to have a look at insight into how to fundamentally manage health and safety risk in small businesses. So I'm going to share my presentation, which you can already see, and I'm going to go through just a few bits and pieces and a few bits of housekeeping for you. So I've added a copy of the PDF presentation in the handouts. To the right-hand side of your screen, you will be able to ask questions. So there's a Q&A section to the right-hand side of your screen. So if you want to ask any questions about any of the things that we're going to do in the next 45 minutes, then please feel free to do so. And in the meantime, what I'm going to do is actually work through the presentation that we've prepared. So the idea of what we're talking about today is risky business. And it's an insight into how we manage health and safety risk in a business. And as I said, my name is Carla Crocombe, and our mission is to eradicate the traditional perception of health and safety training as being dull and boring, because we try to be young and funky, and forge long-term partnerships to drive mutual success with our chosen partners. So we give more than we receive in payment. And we deliver a boutique service that's truly tailored, set the standard of excellence and lead by example, and create and leave an impression on the people that we actually work with. Now today, we are going to look at 3 key areas of managing health and safety within a business. First of all, we're going to look at what is health and safety law. Second of all, we're going to look at why do organisations need to fundamentally manage risk. And thirdly, the key things that any organisation should do, regardless of size. So we're going to talk about some parameters. We're going to look at the different things that organisations fundamentally need to do. And at the end, what we'll do is we'll leave some time for questions, so we can go through any of the questions that anybody has with reference to anything to do with what we would have discussed today. So what is health and safety law? So people talk to me all the time about health and safety law. I've been doing this job for over 20 years, and its primary purpose, our criminal law in the UK, is to punish organisations for failures in health, safety and welfare. We have a piece of legislation called the Health and Safety at Work Act, which came out in 1974, would you believe? And this piece of legislation is primarily designed to protect employees and their health, safety and welfare, but it also protects anyone affected by the work that your organisation does. And this could be literally anyone. It could be members of the public. It could be contractors you're working with. And it's really important that when we start a business, we understand what things apply to us. So when we develop commercial organisations, sometimes we go, right, we've got an idea. We've got an idea for a business which can make money. And that is absolutely brilliant. That's what business is all about. However, the moment you start a business, there are some obligations that actually are thrust upon you. And one of them is to comply with the Health and Safety at Work Act. And there are other things that we have to comply with in business too. And now how much compliance against the Act depends on the numbers of people that are working for you. And we need to talk about that as well. But this is the primary purpose. We also have civil law, and the civil law is all about its primary purpose being about compensation. But primarily we focus today on the criminal side. So it protects employees, their health, safety and welfare, and also protects anyone else affected by what the organisation or the company does. So how do we deal with health and safety risk in business? Well, first of all, we need to understand what risk actually is. And interestingly, again, over the years, I've spoken to lots of organisations, and actually, when we think about defining risk, it can be quite challenging for people to actually understand what risk actually is. But risk is likelihood that harm from a hazard could potentially result in an injury, and also the severity of that injury. And so when we look at business risk, often we need to think about it as holistic. So firstly, we need to understand that we need to get things like health and safety firmly on the agenda. Secondly, we need to take a holistic approach to overall business risk. So no separation here. So when we talk about risk, what we're actually talking about is all areas of risk within the business, not just occupational health and safety, but also things like the risks from IT and what happens if you don't have your IT. So, for example, yesterday morning, I couldn't get one of my computers to switch on. That's a risk to the business. And they are things that we need to integrate into our risk planning. What about losing a large contract or losing lots of staff? And so when we're thinking about risk in a business, especially a small embryonic business that is growing, we need to take this holistic approach to overall business risks. And then we must understand the consequences of failing to foresee risk. And this can be difficult because nobody's got a crystal ball, nobody's Mystic Meg, but actually we need to have an idea of understanding how we foresee risk. And there are mechanisms that we can use to be able to try to objectively foresee what the worst case scenarios could potentially be. All sounds really depressing, but actually what it is really logical. It's all about planning. If you have no plans for any business, you're just bumbling along, and actually risk planning is part of your overall business planning. So this particular area, this getting safety firmly on the agenda, taking the holistic overarching approach to overall business risk, and understanding the consequences of failing to foresee risk are really important. So for example, this particular area, the failing to foresee risk, we know as health and safety professionals, when it comes to health and safety statute or criminal law, you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent, which is unusual in criminal law. For anybody who's ever seen the bill or anything else, like no comment gov when you're sitting in an interview, well, that doesn't work in health and safety because you have to physically prove yourself innocent against the requirements of the criminal law. So if it says you shall do something and you don't do it, you need to prove a way of making sure that they understand that you're innocent. And that's very different from other types of criminal law. So very important indeed. So we need to manage risk for 3 key reasons. We need to manage health, safety and welfare for 3 key reasons. And those 3 key reasons we're going to talk about in just a moment. But why do we think this doesn't always happen in a business? When we ask this question, time and time again, we get lots of different answers. So why does it not always happen in a business? Why does it not always happen in a business? Really important for us to think about. So in essence, when we think about businesses, a lot of people start a business with a commercial idea. So the idea is to make money, and that's fine. That's what business is all about. But often, one of the biggest things that small business owners talk to us about is the fact that they don't understand what they actually need to do. So number one, not understanding, having no insight into what they need to do. Now, one of the most important things for any business owner is to go to the HSE website and start to understand actually what your obligations are. And there are so many obligations for us as business owners. You know, I'm a business owner. I understand those obligations, everything from data protection to, making sure your company's got its confirmation statement, all of these kind of different things that we have as business owners. And health and safety is just another part of it. You know, cybersecurity, think about all the different obligations that we may have as businesses. So that's one key reason. So another key reason is people don't see it as a priority. So if you're focused on running a business, priority is making money. And actually, it may not be seen as a priority. One of the most rare ones is that people just genuinely don't care. But you do see it from time to time. So there's a whole range of reasons why it doesn't always happen in a business. It's always last on the agenda. But safety and health, if it goes wrong, can cost us an awful lot of money, regardless of how small we are. So the three fundamental key reasons that we need to manage risk are the moral and the legal and the financial. Now, this moral side of it is this matter of common humanity. It's all about making sure that people understand that, you know, we want to look after people in the workplace. We have a moral duty to make sure people go home with all their bits and their mental sanity, obviously, as long as they came to work with them in the first place. This is what this is all about. The legal side, we have two really key areas, and I've already started to talk about them. The criminal side, we are one of the most heavily legislated countries in the world when it comes to health and safety. And so we need to understand what criminal obligations that we have. And bearing in mind what I just said about you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And then the stuff from civil law, so that what comes from the sort of law, common law, this common law duty of care that we all have to one another. And that extends to employers in the workplace. And then, as I said, accidents cost money. For every pound that we may get back from our insurers following an accident, we may have to pay out up to 30 or 40 pounds per pound that we receive back from our insurers ourselves. The average amount in the UK is around £10. So for every pound that you get back from your insurers following an accident, you may have to pay out £10 as an organisation yourself per pound. So you can see accidents cost money. Things like having statutory fines, and also the court costs, and then civil claims and insurance companies, hiking up your insurance bills. There's a whole range of key reasons. Years ago, I worked for an organisation that had a severe accident. So a chap was working for the organisation and he fell through a fragile roof light. He fell 35 foot. And actually that case went on for years. So there's a whole range of things that happen. Management time, getting involved with insurers, speaking to the enforcing authorities, which in most cases in the UK is the HSE or the Health and Safety Executive. So three really key reasons why we fundamentally should be managing health and safety in our operations, in our businesses. So one of the things that people always ask me after 20 odd years of doing this job are, if I've got a small business, what do I need to do? So I'm a health and safety, I'm a health and safety professional. This is one of the questions that comes up time and time again. So there are really 5 really key things that we need to do. And in the corner of my presentation here, you can see I'll just draw on the screen. You've got plan, do, check and act. And it all focuses on this cyclical approach to managing occupational health and safety. The first thing that any small business owner should be doing is identifying if you directly employ 5 or more people. Now, when it comes to health and safety, some of you will remember 3 is the magic number, the song. Well, when it comes to health and safety, 5 is the magic number. So we say 5 is the magic number. So where you've got 5 or more people, you actually have to make sure that you start writing stuff down. This is really important. So you identify if you've got 5 or more people. You need to get access to competent advice. Now, regardless, to be honest, if you have got 5 or more people, having somebody on board who can give you competent advice is really important to the organisation in some shape or form, because when it comes to health and safety, there are many people out there who are not giving people competent advice. And this word competent is incredibly important. Now, we class, when we talk about health and safety, as competence being Kate. So we talk about competent Kate. So we need somebody who's giving us advice within the organisation, who has the right knowledge, so the K for Kate, the right attitude, the right aptitude, training, and also experience. So having the right person do the job, and it can be tough. Only recently, I was speaking to an organisation who've asked me to help them, who are slightly larger than smaller. They've got 50 staff, so they're not a small organisation. And the advice that they've been getting, because they've been using an external source, isn't particularly brilliant. Now, one of the things that's really important for us to remember is it's far better for us to have that competent advice within the business, but it does depend on the size. Because if you are only a very small business, having somebody just dedicated to occupational health and safety can be quite costly when there's other things that need to be done. So it really is a balance, but the regulators absolutely prefer you to have that competent advice in-house. And after all the years of doing this job, it's definitely the best way to succeed with reference to getting that competent advice. Then we have to identify the risks within the business. Now ask yourselves, do you actually know what risks your business actually has? That's a really key question. Do you understand what risk actually is? And do you understand what occupational health and safety risks your business actually has? Then set up a simple safety and health management system, or management system of some kind. And this is why I put plan, do, check and act here on the right hand side. So a cyclical approach to managing safety, and health, we plan, do, check and act. So here we are planning for what we're going to do, we're doing what we plan to do, we're checking what we've done, and we're acting on the things that are actually not working or need improvement. And the whole idea of all of this is this cycle for continuous improvement. This is what it's all about. It's all about making sure we are continuously improving when it comes to occupational health and safety. So set up their health and safety management system and manage the system. So if I was to say to somebody, what are the 5 key things that businesses need to do? These are the 5 things that I would suggest that organisations need to do. So check that you understand this is really important. Identify the risks within the business. Identify, what risks you have so that you can sleep at night. Managing risk is far better than burying your head in the sand, for sure. So why should this be a priority? Another really key question. So the sentencing guidelines for health and safety criminal breaches have resulted in a significant increase in fines over the last 5 years. So we have seen new sentencing guidelines come in the past, in the late 90s, early 2000s. Sometimes organisations got very small fines and individuals very small fines. We've seen a significant increase in the levels and the nature of fines. We prosecute very heavily in the UK. As I said earlier, the onus of proof is in health and safety. You are guilty until you prove yourself innocent. And this is really important for us to understand, really important. Now, if company owners create a safety management system from the beginning, it is far easier to grow the business in a sustainable way, rather than this kind of seat of the pants way in terms of risk. And even really large organisations. So over the years, I have worked for some very significant organisations, and I have seen different standards. And some organisations can be incredibly large, but still deal with health and safety in a seat of pants kind of way in terms of risk. So it's about stepping back, being strategic, and creating that kind of system very early on in the growth of the business. And that means that once a business gets to 50, 60, 100, 1,000 people, you've actually got something in place. So developing key things. And having a risk profile, actually understanding what your risks are within the business, what the hazards are, what are the risks. Then we have an opportunity to make financial planning far more accurate, and creating a simple safety management system can also aid and assist that as well. And having an effective management system helps people, company owners in particular, recruit and retain the best employees. Interestingly enough, especially amongst people who are under 35, health and safety is very much a priority when they're looking for a job. So there's a massive mindset shift, so we need to think about that, because you want to have the best employees. And we also need to think that organisations are going to look after us. So employees will expect us to do this and manage health and safety. And organisations that manage health and safety are much more likely to keep and retain staff. And we've seen a very different culture over the last sort of 20 years, where more and more employees are actually claiming against organisations for health and safety failures, where they've had an injury, illness, or some kind of loss. So this is why it should be a priority. Now, I've been doing this job so many years that sometimes when we talk about health and safety, people literally will go, oh, it's just something I have to do, oh, health and safety and all the rest of it. But it is so incredibly important, and it can have a massive impact on the organisation if it is well managed. So all about managing this well. Again, any organisation that's created absolutely must genuinely look after its health and safety. So what's next? What do we need to do as organisations who are kind of growing and dealing with health and safety? Fundamentally, we must construct a policy statement. So where we've got 5 or more people, these things need to be written down. But even if you've got less than 5 people working for the organisation, whilst the legal requirement is that it isn't written down, so it doesn't need to be written down. So if you've got 4 people, it doesn't necessarily need to be written down. Logic dictates that if you want to grow an organisation, these things should just be done, because by the time you get to 5 or 6 people, you may have forgotten about doing these things. So writing a policy statement and this 1-page annual statement that takes stuff out of the Health and Safety at Work Act. So the Health and Safety at Work Act talks about looking after our employees' health, safety and welfare so far as reasonably practicable. And it talks about having safe systems of work and information, instruction and training, and safe use and handling of storage and articles and substances. We need to kind of embed that in that policy statement. Now, it's a legal requirement if you have 5 or more people working for you that this policy statement gets created, 1 page, and is updated annually. And then create a policy document. So your policy document should have 3 parts. Now, I always think of these as POA. So first of all, we are talking about the policy statement. So the P is your policy statement. The O is an organisational chart. This organogram, or this organisational chart, should show the roles and responsibilities for everybody with reference to health and safety within the organisation, and feedback loops, who does what, how and when. And then the A part of it is all about arrangements. These are your stuff to do with your policies and procedures, your stuff to do with risk assessment, and all of these kind of other things. So there's a whole range of different things within that section. So write a policy and create this policy statement. So this is the first thing we kind of need to do. Then we need to control risks, but before we control them, we need to understand them. So I'll go back to definitions. When we are within the workplace, the fundamental thing we need to do is to spot hazards. The definition of a hazard is anything with the potential to cause harm. Now, hazards come in a variety of different categories, everything from noise, vibration, working at height, a printer in your office and the chemicals in your printer, making a cup of tea with a Burko. There's a whole range of different things that could potentially be hazardous. Water, dust, so many things. And from those hazards, from the things that have the potential to cause harm, we then need to establish the likelihood of the harm occurring from the hazard and also the resulting severity. So when we're talking about risk, we need to start to profile those risks and then control them. So we use mitigation techniques, so control techniques to mitigate the level of risk. So understanding things like the hierarchy of control. So the hierarchy of control. Here we think about the best way to deal with a hazard is to eliminate it. But we also know that in the real world, it's really hard for us to eliminate all known hazards. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to set up businesses because we wouldn't have any risk at all. But it's all about balance. So legally, we have to do things with reference to risk in the majority of cases so far as reasonably practicable. And that piece of terminology means that we need to balance risk against cost, time and effort. That's what we're always doing really with reference to health and safety. So it's not about wrapping people up in cotton wool. What it's actually about is actually managing very thoroughly risk. Now, other things we need to do in the organisation is to speak to our staff about everything to do with occupational health and safety. And again, there are legal mechanisms for that. So we have if we have unionised kind of workplaces, we have a piece of legislation that controls the consultation around that, so the safety representatives and safety committees regulations. And then if we've got normal everyday kind of reps who kind of representatives of employee safety, we've got another piece of legislation that deals with consultation. But speaking and involving your staff has added benefits because actually they may come up with ideas for managing risk that you have never thought of, and you could use those ideas to manage and control the risks in the kind of section above which we were talking about. So speak to your staff about health and safety. What do you think about health around here? Do we look after your health and safety? Interestingly, there are about 29 million working days lost every single year in the UK because people don't manage health and safety properly. 29 million working days lost. So we need to be able to recoup some of those and get those things back. And train and inform your staff. So all of the legislation that we have demands that employees are trained, and the training needs to be relative, interactive with them so that they can understand what they actually need to do and have the capacity for them to be able to fundamentally ask questions and get feedback and get involved in things. And if you get your staff involved, it makes a huge difference when it comes to occupational health and safety because they're buying in with reference to that. Then think about making sure your workplace is fundamentally safe. So think about the workplace. Are the doors safe? Are the windows safe? Are the floors safe? All of these kind of things, because that is also going to be incredibly important. Make sure you record accidents and also incidents and think about how things happen. So you actually have to start to investigate accidents and incidents and start to understand how these things have occurred, even down to things like near misses. So dealing with near misses. So not just things that have actually resulted in injury, but had the potential to result in some form of injury. Think about getting insured. We are legally obliged to have employers' liability compulsory insurance because there's actually a physical piece of legislation that demands that we have that if we have people working for us. So it's really important that we understand that it's a criminal offence not to have that. And obviously, even if you're just like a normal company, you've got less, kind of no direct employees, for example, you still need to have public liability insurance. And you may, depending on the job that you do, have to also have something called professional indemnity insurance. So again, check out for these things. And these will cover, remember what I said about the pound, they'll cover things like civil claims against the organisation and all these kind of things. So insurance is incredibly important. So if you don't have insurance, reflect, go back, sort it out because it's really important. And then keep up to date with legal changes. Again, this is incredibly important too. Making sure you keep up to date with anything that's changed. Now, the way to do that is to continuously have a look at the HSE website, and you can sign up for kind of alerts from the HSE as well. So this is really very useful. So keep up to date with all the legal changes, and I put the website there, www.hse.gov.uk. Now, if I think about the tasks for the senior management team, depending on how large the organisation is, Again, as I said, we need to understand the risks, like learn. What we need is senior management team to be leading. When I talk about leadership, it's incredibly different to being a manager. So some of us are really good managers, but being a leader is something completely different. When we look at senior managers in the UK who've been prosecuted, a lot of the time they've just failed in their leadership role. And being a senior manager in a business, even if it's a small business, is a very important role. So senior managers need to learn about risk, and not to tell other people within the business it's their responsibility, not to give one other person in the organisation the job of doing the risk assessments. That's not what it's about. Understand risk, understand the likelihood and the severity, understand and identify the risks. So profile them, understand what your risks are. You know, do you have risks in the business from noise or dust or any of these kind of things? What are your risks? What do you do as a business? Driving, you know, this is it. Do you have people driving around? You know, is driving a risk to you? You know, do you have any of these things? Understand what your risks are. You know, is there risk from driving? The second thing we need to do is do what we said. Define the role and responsibilities when it comes to occupational health and safety within our organisation. Again, incredibly important for us to actually do. We need to ensure that people know what they're doing. So if you don't have job descriptions within the organisation, I would suggest you write job descriptions for each of your staff members, however small the organisation is, and include some level of health and safety responsibility. Because this is the thing about other things to do with occupational health and safety, that employees of your organisation will also have legal duties, and as an employer, we have to tell them what those legal duties are. Thirdly, we need to ensure competency. And as I said earlier, we talk about competency as being Kate. So here, the knowledge, having the right knowledge, the right attitude, aptitude, so these natural skills. You know, if I came to you today, the right attitude is important as well. If I came on today and go, oh, you know, hello, my name is Carla, and we're going to do a bit of health and safety today, you know, that kind of thing. Having the right attitude is really important to what we do. So if you've got people in the business who are, you know, dealing with occupational health and safety, they need to want to do that job. They need to want to actively be involved with that job rather than it being chucked on somebody who doesn't actually want to do the job. Being trained and having experience. Now, experience is really important too. If you think about different points in our lives, risk perception is something that we think about. Risk perception changes as we age. Our perception of it changes. Our toleration of risk changes as we age. So we need to think about the type of people that we're putting in these roles. And then create a simple system. So here I'm talking about plan, do, check and act, and a little bit of information for you with reference to what you can do. You can use HSG 65, which is the Health and Safety Executive free management system. And this is awesome because it is free, and we like the word free when it comes to companies. And it's there for on the HSC website for anybody to use. So plan, do, check and act. And it is this cyclical approach to dealing with occupational health and safety. And it's all about continuous improvement. That's what we say at the end. So we are continuously improvement. We're always continuously improving. And this is really important because if you have an organisation that's really awful with reference to health and safety and really non-compliant, you can't change everything in one day. So my dad used to say Rome wasn't built in a day, and it is incredibly important that we don't try to change everything. But what we deal with is serious and imminent danger, and then we plan the rest of the activities over time so that we can continuously improve. So these are specific tasks for the senior management team. However, regardless of the size of the organisation, because I'm assuming most of you will want your organisations to actually grow, and in which case these things need to be in early days. Very important that these things are there early days. So this is the idea of HSG 65, and you can see some of the things that we've already talked about today. So systematic, I'm very systematic and very logical. The policy part of it all focuses on this, having this plan of action. So having a policy statement, having these organisational roles and responsibilities, and having arrangements. And that fits into that kind of planning side of implementing the system, planning whilst you're implementing the system. And then risk profiling, organising, and then making sure you're getting things up and running and working. And measuring performance is down here in the check section. So here we're looking at reactive and proactive indications of how the safety management system is performing. So here we would look at how many accidents we've had, how many incidents, how many near misses we've had, like that could have resulted in severe injury or even a fatality. And then we measure those. How are we actually doing? And then the act bit is the learning lessons and reviewing whether or not the system is working, is the system working, and are the components of the system actually working? You know, do we need to change the way we do things? Interestingly, if you have an accident and you have a risk assessment, that risk assessment must be reviewed because clearly it didn't assess risk properly, otherwise you wouldn't have had an accident. So it's really important for us to understand that this is all about continuous improvement. So it's a cycle that goes round and round in circles, and it demands tenacity within the organisation. It demands that continuous drive within an organisation, which some organisations really do lack. But this is, again, I said, free management system, so you don't have to get accreditation or anything for this particular type of system. So a little bit more detail for each of those sections I've put in here about planning includes the aspects of formulating the policy, as I said, the POA, and then the doing, the organising and implementation of that plan, the checking, your measuring of performance both proactively and reactively, and then reviewing your health and safety performance, and then continuously improving. All what it's all about. Now, there are a plethora of places which small organisations can get help, and this is really important for us to remember. So, a few years ago, I joined the Federation of Small Businesses. They are absolutely brilliant for us to be able to find information about what we need to do with reference to health and safety. So if you haven't already, if you join the FSB, they have like a document library, and their document library literally has loads of health and safety forms, health and safety advice online. And remember what I said about the 5 is the magic number, because it's really important for us to understand that that's when we really need to start writing things down. But also remember what I said to you about the fact that if you're starting an organisation, the majority of people will want that organisation to grow. So therefore, get this stuff sorted as early on as possible, policy, organisational or organogram arrangements. And then as the organisation grows, you don't get those growing pains in terms of safety. You just don't. And I spent years trying to get organisations to think like this. So it's really important that we kind of take that advice as small company owners. And the health and safety executive, whilst they are the enforcing authority, which we know they're the ones who come out if there's a problem, if you get a whistleblower, if you get a complaint, or if you have an accident, they also have a plethora of advice on their website. So I have picked out a link here. And again, as I said, I've shared the PDF copy of this presentation in the handout section. So you can take that and you can have a look at all the things that I've been through today, minus my scribbles. So this is their simple health and safety, so for small businesses. And then don't forget, you have insurers. And now insurers are one of the best sources of information. They are also one of the biggest drivers for improving health and safety in the UK, because when they give you your insurance quote, it's all based on risk. So there's a whole range of stuff that you can actually get from the ABI. So have a look at that as well, because there is so much stuff on there about liability and health and safety for small and medium-sized businesses, which is incredibly so useful to us as organisations in any shape or form. It is really important that we have a look at these things. There's so many bits out there, but the FSB, you've also got the Chambers of Commerce that can help. So we know we can get help from anywhere. And actually, some of the organisations that we partner with and all the rest of it, like B2B, you can get information because there's so many people within the groups who are actually involved with maybe occupational health and safety and those kinds of things. So we're going to come back and we're going to have a look at some questions in just a minute. But about us, you can find us on YouTube if you fancy. We've got some videos on YouTube. We've just recently launched a channel. There's some stuff on there about accident investigation, some stuff on nutrition. We do a lot on nutrition as well. Fits into occupational health and safety. You can visit our website at
safetyrocks.co.uk, and we are, and as am I, on LinkedIn, so you can always find us on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, I just thank you for your time today. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to come back and ask you if you've got any questions. So I'm just going to come back through and stop sharing this and ask you if you've actually got any questions. So has anybody got any questions? Let's just have a quick look and see if there's any questions from today. So no questions. I was just checking to see whether or not anybody has any questions. No questions for today. Okay, well then, if that's the case, really good to have everybody on board today. So thank you very much for joining me. If you do have any questions after the session that you want to ask, then please feel free to contact us. On the handouts that are in the handout section on the right-hand side, there is the webpage, and there is a little box on the webpage that can actually give you more details on anything. Like you can fill in the box, and then you can contact us at info@safetyrocks, and it'll come through to us. So if you've got any questions with reference to that, and I just thank you all for coming back and coming today and joining us for the stuff to do with risky business. It's really nice to meet you all. Thank you very much for your time.